Hola a todos! Today I want to talk about perspectives. So you may have heard that tip, like when you have a problem to solve, as a kind of typical creativity technique, change your perspective. Take a different perspective on your problem and gradually you will find your solution. But actually, what does that mean? What is a perspective and how can that help you? And in this video, I will show you specifically how different perspectives can help you to organize your to-do list. So having too much to do is a problem for many of us. So by changing your perspectives, you can get a better understanding of why you are doing things and how much you're trying to do, and find a way to, well, say no now and then to reduce your workload to something manageable. So what is a perspective? Cognitively speaking, I would say a perspective is simply a way of categorizing your world. So whatever we do and see, let's say we have objects around us, but also events, things that happen around us. What we do all day long is to put those things into categories. So let's say maybe not the greatest event, you have lost your job. So we lose our job and maybe the default category we put that in would be disaster. So something happened, it's not great, somebody basically told you you're not good enough, they don't need you, they don't want you. That's usually not a great feeling. So the default we put that in might be disaster. But this is a good moment to start to try to change your perspective. Maybe it's not just bad. Maybe there are other categories that could fit into. So maybe, that job may have given you the money you need every month, but maybe it wasn't that much fun, really. So in a way, it could be a kind of liberation category that this event falls into. It might also fit into the category new opportunities, maybe freedom. So this is also something that comes with the loss of a job. You are kind of forced to recognize your opportunities and to take another one. So just shifting the label we put onto some event or object or whatever there is around us, that can help us to change the perspective. That is basically changing the perspective, relabeling. And there are lots of things connected to that. So what I just talked about is basically putting on a different label, a different category. But it also means changing the categories themselves. So we have another video about work and leisure. So these are two categories for tasks. So I'm doing something. Do I classify that as work or as leisure activity? And maybe those categories aren't actually the greatest categories. Maybe there are other ways to categorize your tasks. And then there are also different dimensions of categories. So when you think about a job, for example, there's the economic dimension. It's a source of income. But there's also a dimension of what it gives you as a person, like finding sense in what you're doing something meaningful with your time, achieving things. This is also a dimension. And there's also maybe a social dimension, who you work with. So it's always different things that come together for one thing. So we never put something into just one category. And it can, of course, be this different categories in the same dimension, but it can also be different categories of different dimensions. So perspectives are basically different types of categories that we put things into. So let's put that onto a to-do list. Let's say we have a to-do list. Here's an example. So we have different tasks on our list. And these are 24 tasks. This is not a lot. Maybe we wouldn't have to change perspectives if we had that little to do, but it might be tasks that take a lot of time and maybe they overwhelm us already. So our problem could be that we simply have too much to do. So the list gets longer and longer, and we have a feeling that we really cannot cope with all of this. And that is a typical thing. And many times it is true that we simply will not be able to do all of this. And there are lots of videos on this channel where I tell you, you have to say no. No to yourself, no to others, because you cannot get everything. Your day has a limit. We have 24 hours per day, and this is just the time we have to get things done. So at the end of the day, the big question is often, well, there are actually often two questions. One is, what can I get rid of? What are the things that I can really do? And the second is, what do I start with? And to answer those two questions, it can be helpful to also change your perspectives. And in todoListo, we have as a tool a kind of tagging system, which we call properties. So you have different types of properties that you can attach to your tasks. One is a temporal category, saying, okay, when do I think I want to do that? Then we have something we call actually categories, like topics you're working on, bigger chunks, something that is makes sense to you, how to structure your tasks. So for me, it's usually kind of topics or projects. And the third dimension we have is infos, which are a bit more generic, like how important is it for me, or what kind of tasks am I doing? And so we already have different dimensions of categories kind of predefined, and you can always decide how you want to use them. So there are other videos that show you how you can very flexibly use those different dimensions. So when we have those dimensions attached to our tasks, we can use them to look at the tasks from those dimensions. And that is the best thing to do is to group them. So we have this grouping option here, and let's maybe group by sections. That means by time. So I see what I want to do on each day. And so here I can already see, is it too much? So if all of my days are full for the next 3 weeks, I can be pretty sure that I have too much on my list, because there will be new things coming in. There will be things that take longer than I thought. This is a good sign to say, okay, I have to do something, to really recognize whether you have a problem. Then you can look at the whole thing from the category perspective, like which are the topics that I'm working on. And that can be really helpful, for example, to finish things. So sometimes there's a category that has maybe just one task left, or 2 or 3. And maybe these are smaller things. You can look at them and like, okay, maybe I just do them. So I get rid of the whole topic. I get rid of the whole thing, like a bigger chunk. And I can put a check mark behind that and just get rid of this larger thing that may be in my mind. Or the other direction could be that I see there's a topic that requires a lot of attention, but I simply cannot find the time. I could squeeze it in like 10 minutes per day or something, but that wouldn't really proceed or really push it forward. So it might be better to just lay that aside and wait until I have more time to really concentrate on that topic. So these categories are really useful to step back and see why you are doing something. And also grouping by infos can be quite useful sometimes, especially something like repeated tasks for me is pretty useful to look at, because these are kind of the baseline that I'm doing anyway. So these are things that I'm doing like every month, every week, but things that are there that need to get done. So if I have 50 tasks that I repeat, those that I do just once a year may not be so bad, but if it's like every week, then basically my week is full. Then I know that either I have to reduce those repeating tasks to make space for other things, or I just have to accept the fact that maybe my job or my life is structured in a way that many things repeat and a lot of my time is already allocated. And realizing this means that I simply cannot take on like extra projects, extra work that that is more flexible, because I don't have that flexibility. I simply don't have any slots left each week. So finding a balance between those like basic things that just need to get done and the special ones, the things that maybe move you forward, or things that come on top, that has to have a certain balance. And so you can really see how your time is allocated. And so switching between those perspectives, I mean, it seems pretty trivial to group by different tags on a task, but really try it. So for me, that is really helpful, especially when I feel overwhelmed, to look at those different dimensions, and it does something in your brain. It's ridiculous, but this is how thinking works. This kind of categorization and making clear and visualizing what things you have in each category, that really helps to get a different perspective. It's not just seeing these things, your brain does something. So seeing things from different categories really helps your brain. Of course, all of this only works if you put those properties on your tasks. And this process by itself, it seems like, oh, it's extra work, I have to put those tags on. But that also helps you right away, when you put a new task on your list, to think about why. Why do I put that in there, and when can I do it? So when you have a new task and you cannot find any time slot where to put it because your next 3 or 4 weeks are completely full, that is a good signal to think about whether you should get rid of some of the other tasks because that one is important, or right away send your email back. Instead of saying, yeah, I'm doing it, you say, I can do that, but just in 3 months. So maybe somebody else can do that. So just right away seeing it, I cannot even categorize it properly. That's a good sign that it might not belong on your list in the first place. And the same with categories here in todoListo, the property categories. If some task doesn't fit in any of your categories, that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't belong on your to-do list, but it can mean that it is a topic that is kind of lurking in the shadows and you haven't really realized that you're working on that it is a bigger thing that might even bring more work and you haven't realized it yet. So that might be useful to see. It can also be something that just doesn't fit into any of the things that seem important to you now. And then the question is that an important thing to do? Should you really do it? It doesn't pay into any of your bigger topics, so why would you do it? Again, it doesn't mean it's necessary, it's automatically unnecessary, but it's a good opportunity to think about, why are you actually trying to do this? And if you cannot find a reason, don't put it on your to-do list in the first place. So thinking about perspective basically means recategorizing. Taking different viewpoints by putting events, objects, whatever, into different categories. And especially if you have too much to do, this kind of change of perspective can help a lot. And what I just showed you with todoListo is also a reason why I'm not a fan of putting a to-do list on paper. I love to work with paper. It's unbeatable when you think about the flexibility that paper gives you. You can write things down very quickly. You can even draw little pictures around it. So these are things that are impossible to beat with a digital tool. But when you have too much, and that is the problem for many of us, then the tool can help you to switch your perspectives and to take different perspectives. On paper, you cannot do that. You have one list in one particular order. Maybe you can cut little pieces out of your to-do list and move them around. But this is just something that even then it takes time. When you also think about creativity techniques with little post-it notes, you can take them away and put them somewhere else. But still, it's the physical task to do that. And here you just press a button and you get that perspective basically for free. This is why I have my to-do list in todoListo, because it just makes it so much easier when you have too much. If you don't have a lot to do, you don't need it, obviously. But if you're overwhelmed by what you have to do, this is really the thing to do. And yeah, so todoListo gives you those options to change your perspectives, to also change the categories themselves quickly, and yeah, to really think explicitly about why you are doing things and more consciously decide what you really want to do and what just cannot be done. So I invite you to try it. If you're not using todoListo yet, it's free. You can use it for any amount of time for free. Go to the website and let me know how taking different perspectives works for you. So I hope to see you next time. Hasta luego.